I'm Bailey Aulenbach and I'm the owner of Midnight Mama Sleep Consulting. I'm a sleep consultant, and each week I get questions flooding into my DMs about what to do about naps, what to do about early morning wakings, and I've started this segment called Sleep Questions in My DMs. So every Friday I'm going to highlight some questions that come in and I'll share them with you. First question: do you recommend dropping the nap if night sleep is 10 hours or less for a 3-year-old? And yes, personally, I would. But if it works for you, keep it. Someone else responded to that same question. What about for a 2-year-old? Naps 2 hours, but only sleeps 10 overnight. I would still shorten the nap if I were them. I would shorten the nap to 1 hour long to help get a longer overnight sleep. 2-year-olds don't need as much daytime sleep, but sometimes they'll take a long nap if you'll let them. So if you are having issues with overnight stretches, having a short night, then I would recommend cutting back on some of that daytime sleep and seeing how they do. The next question. Hey hun, sorry to bug you. Just a quick question. My son is going to start daycare tomorrow, and I'm curious if I should bring his blankets and sleep sack from home, or what do you suggest? Thanks. I always suggest to try to keep the sleep environment as similar as possible across the board. So if you have an extra sleep sack that you could bring and even leave at daycare, I would do that. And if your child sleeps with a comfort item such as a lovey or a little stuffed animal or a blanket, I would also bring that back and forth from daycare. That way your child is cozy in their sleep space. They're familiar with what they do when they see these objects. That way sleeping at daycare won't be so weird and unfamiliar. Any recommendations or advice for when baby rolls in their sleep, wakes up and cries? This is night number 2 of rolling and wake-ups. My first suggestion is to practice rolling as much as you can during their awake time. So practice rolling from back to tummy and especially from tummy to back. My second recommendation is, in order to keep safe sleep rules, we can't have anything in the crib with the baby. But oftentimes babies start to only roll one way. So if your baby is only rolling to their right side, then I want you to put them closer to the crib rails on that side, so the crib rails actually prevent them from rolling that way. If you don't feel comfortable with them being that close to the crib rails, then I suggest putting them in a playpen or a pack and play for the next couple of nights while you figure out this rolling thing. That way they are close to the mesh and not wooden rails. Another thing you can do is you can flip them back a few times. So 5 or 6 times you can roll them back onto their back. One of the problems with this method is that it becomes a game. So rolling them back becomes a game. So as much as you can, we want them to get themselves back into their familiar position, which is sleeping on their back. But that being said, if they roll onto their tummy and they fall asleep, I don't want you to touch them. Leave them. They are safe if they get there themselves. So as long as their crib is blanket free and there's nothing else in the crib with them, just a fitted crib sheet, then they are safe to lay on their tummies if they get there on their own. I have a question for you. I know you said that if your babies aren't having great naps during the day, to do a 6 o'clock bedtime. Would you actually start the bedtime at 6 o'clock, or would you start at 5:30 to be asleep by 6? This is a great question. I am a big advocate for early bedtime if the nap schedule was really off that day. And what this means is I would start the bedtime routine at 5:30 p.m. so that my child is awake in their crib and ready to sleep at 6 p.m. So I never recommend putting a baby down to sleep unless they're a newborn. So any child that's over 3 months old should be put down awake. That way they're aware of their surroundings, but I would start that routine at 5:30, put them down at 6 p.m. If I could pick your brain quick, my daughter is 9.5 months old and is on 2 naps. She has been cutting her morning nap short to about 45 or 55 minutes, but her afternoon nap is 1.5 to 2.5 hours long. Is this because of wake times? Should we be pushing the morning wake window to 3 hours? We're doing 2 hours and 45 minutes now. Problem is we're both working, and earliest bedtime we can get in is 7 p.m. once we're all fed. So usually her last awake window is anywhere from 3 to 3.5 hours. At 9.5 months old, 3 to 3.5 hours of awake time is very reasonable. So I would actually recommend having longer awake time in the morning, about 3 hours. So if she wakes at 7, then I'd recommend napping them at 11. And then I would actually cut back that really long afternoon nap to about an hour and a half. If you're having too much afternoon sleep, then the baby's not going to want that much more daytime sleep in the morning. So if we kind of balance out those 2 naps to have about 2.5 hours total of daytime sleep in a day, then you're really setting them up for good naps that day. And last question. My son is 2.5 years old. He used to nap for 2 hours, sometimes even 2.5 hours. Since the past 1 month, he has been waking up in after 1 hour. He howls and keeps calling for me. I let him be and have allowed him to cry even for 40 minutes, but nothing has improved. What could be the reason? The reason is that they don't need that much daytime sleep. A 2.5-year-old does not need 2 to 2.5 hours of a nap. It's a nice break for the parents, but it's unrealistic for the child to be napping that long if you want them to have a long overnight stretch of sleep. So a 1-hour nap is very reasonable for a 2.5-year-old. And I wouldn't try to make it any longer unless you're okay with sacrificing some of your 12-hour night. So if you're okay with having a shorter night, then sure, let them nap longer. But this is going to push bedtime back to like 8:30, sometimes 9 o'clock if they have this big fat nap in the middle of the day. Those long naps are perfect for a baby that has newly transitioned to 1 nap up to 18 months. And after 18 months, the nap starts to get shorter and shorter until around 2.5 to 3, they drop the nap completely. So that's what I would recommend. Thank you so much for tuning in to Sleep Question Friday, sleep questions that come into my DMs. If you personally have any sleep questions that have come up over the last week or over the last month, please don't hesitate to send me an email at bailey@midnightmamasleepconsulting.com or hop into my DMs. So head over to Instagram or Facebook, shoot me a message, and I'd love to answer your question. If you're looking for some more guided support, I do have sleep package options available that I'll link in the description. Be sure to comment and subscribe and press the bell icon so you'll get notifications every time a new video is posted.